Today we'll be covering advanced troubleshooting of devices connecting to Isonas Pure Access Cloud using the Isonas Configuration Tool. To get started here, we're going to launch the Isonas Configuration Tool listed here on the desktop. And when the configuration tool first launches, we will not see any devices listed because we have not attempted to discover the units. We'll go ahead and click Discover Units. If there are devices on the local network that can respond, they will come up. At this point, we will see 3 devices from this local network. For the purposes of troubleshooting today, we are going to be working with this 4E4F RC04 device. This device has not been connecting to Pure Access Cloud, and we will be walking through various reasons why it may not. So the most common causes and reasons a device won't connect will come down to usually among 4 things. The DNS setting. DNS is what the device first uses to try to resolve the host, which is IsonasPureAccessCloud.com. The next reason a device might not connect would be it's not pointed at the correct host, which should be IsonasPureAccessCloud.com listed here. If it has another setting, it will not connect. Another reason would be that the default TCP UDP port is blocked, which is port 55533. Another reason a device usually will not connect is there is some conflict on the network between using DHCP and static IP. Sometimes you'll just need to flip between these two. And the final reason we're going to cover here today as to why a device won't connect would be the device is not in the correct mode. This being the connectivity mode, which the reader can be either client or server mode. A reader must be in client mode in order for it to connect. So to get started, we're going to first figure out what settings this device currently has. We will select the device up above and then click Show Reader Info. And we'll see in the settings that the device has DHCP enabled, so that means it's not on static. It'll show the current IP address, static IP address that has been saved in it, the current network configurations, as well as the DNS and the remote host name. Right now, this is all the defaults that device comes loaded with. So right now we'll see that it is currently pointed at 8.8.4.4 for the current DNS, which is Google's secondary DNS for resolution. Sometimes, however, the default DNS will not function. So to get started, one of the first things we usually do is to change that DNS to Google's primary DNS as a start. And so in the host address settings, we will put DNS 8.8.8.8, which is the primary, and see if that functions. We will uncheck change network addressing, and then we'll make sure the device is selected up above with the checkbox selected. Then we will click Configure Selected Units, at which point the device will reboot. It'll show in the column Complete Yes, indicating that it did try to get the command out to the device. We will click Discover Units, and we'll see that the device has dropped offline as it's doing a reboot into this new configuration. After a moment, however, the device will come back. Then we will click Show Reader Info again with the device highlighted above and validate that the new DNS is set. At that point, you will check the Isonas Pure Access Cloud site and validate to see if the device is showing online. You might have to refresh the access point listing a couple times and usually give it a minute or two, but a lot of times it will come back by changing this DNS setting. If that still does not work, the next set of steps would be digging deeper into the DNS. And at this point, we will pull up command prompt, and on command prompt, we'll run ipconfig /all. This will show us our local computer's network settings that have been pushed to it. Normally, you would be looking for the Ethernet adapter, but as this computer is not on Ethernet, we will go with the wireless LAN information, as this is actually on the same VLAN as the readers. We will look for a line called DNS servers, and you'll see 2 devices listed there. The top line is the primary local DNS, and the second is the secondary local DNS. At this point, you will try these different DNS configurations and see if either of those help. Usually at this point, the device may start connecting. For now, we'll go ahead and close out of this. And let's say we did all that. Next step is we're going to check to validate that perhaps maybe the device is not connecting to the proper host. For instance, let's go ahead and push it to something inappropriate and validate what happens. So I'm going to select it. And with IsonasPureAccess.com, which is no longer available, we'll actually go ahead and send that host configuration to the access point. And we'll reboot here. The device is back. Click Show Reader Info. And oh, okay, the device will not connect to IsonasPureAccessCloud.com because it is actually pointed at a different website. So to change this, all that will need to happen is here in the host address settings, we'll choose from the URL dropdown, IsonasPureAccessCloud.com. Have the device selected up above, configure, and the device will reboot. The device comes back, show reader info, validate it shows IsonasPureAccessCloud.com, and again, go to the Pure Access website and check the access point listing and perhaps refresh a couple times over a couple minutes to see if the device shows connected yes. If it still doesn't, then the next steps to look for would be to validate, is the TCP UDP port 55533 blocked at the local firewall? At this point, you will need to reach out to your local network administrator to validate if this port is actually now being blocked on the firewall. If this port is blocked, it will not be able to communicate with Pure Access. This port cannot be changed to reflect something that might be allowed within the network. The device can only use this port, even though we can change it here, it will not function under any other port. The next set of steps to go through here as part of troubleshooting, once we validated all the host settings and tried those, next step will be to start working with the network addressing. This is where we get into DHCP versus static IP. So at this point, if this device is not connecting, even though we have tried everything up above, we will go to Show Reader Info and validate what current setting the device has for DHCP or static. If we come here to Show Reader Info and it shows DHCP enabled, it is currently on DHCP. If it says DHCP disabled, then it is on static. And at this point, you would try a different method of it connecting. So if it's on DHCP, you will try putting it to static. A shorthand for this, if you do not have a static IP address table assigned to you, you can try using the current IP address that has been pushed to it via DHCP. In this case, this reader has 10.0.99. To make sure that none of these settings are lost in translation, you'll take a screenshot or you'll use the Windows snipping tool to screenshot what shows here in the reader information screen. We will go ahead and move this off to the side. And now we'll try pushing the device to static using the same IP address. So we'll choose static IP now, and we'll put in the listed current IP, which is 10.0.0.99. The subnet, which is 255.255.255.0, which is also known as a /24 subnet network. Then gateway, which is 10.0.0.1, which is usually the case with networks. The first three are going to match, and then it'll usually be like a .1 at the beginning. Right, once we have this set, we'll have the reader selected up above for the setting that we want to push. And then we'll just hit Configure Network instead of Configure Selected Units. Configure Network, complete yes. The device will again reboot. And when it's in static IP mode, usually it does come up faster. At this point, we can see the device is back. We will click Show Reader Info to validate what settings it has. Now it shows DHCP disabled, meaning it did take our static IP settings. And now we see the current IP and the static IP match, meaning that it did take those settings we pushed to it as well. Right, at this point, the device will usually connect. The final advanced troubleshooting we're going to cover relates to the reader connectivity mode. As stated earlier, a device must be in client mode in order to reach out to the host. To see the current status of a access point, we will highlight it up above. Again, go to Show Reader Info and see if it says client mode. If it does not say client mode here in reader mode, it will say server, at which point you know you will need to reconfigure it into client mode. And to do this, we'll make sure to uncheck Change Network Addressing, validate all the host settings are correct here, and then make sure that this connectivity mode is set to client mode. Once that is all selected, select the reader up above with a check mark, hit configure, it will queue, and then it will complete. The device will reboot. And then once the device has come back, we will highlight it, click Show Reader Info, and you'll make sure that the reader mode now reads client. And at this point, if you have exhausted all of these other troubleshooting methods, deeper network troubleshooting can be found by going to manual.pureaccess.com and going through the network troubleshooting guide. And then you can always reach out to Isonas product support at 877-671-7011, and then options 2, and then 2, and then 3.